Hi everyone, welcome to Type Talks. Today we have Sharon with us and she has ENFP preferences. Shout out to the November conference the Association of Psychological Type International is holding that she will be speaking at. And so feel free to check this out if you enjoy this interview because you'll get a lot more Sharon there in all her wonderfulness. And so would you like to tell us a bit about you and the topic that you'd like to be discussing today?
Absolutely. So my name is Sharon Lovoy, Lovoy. And I am actually in Birmingham, Alabama. So I come from the South and I have that heavy Southern accent. So I hope that everyone can understand me. And so my background in terms of type is I was actually certified by Otto Kroger Associates way back when. I mean, we're talking like in the late 80s. I mean, it was a long time ago. And I was actually introduced to type in the organization for whom I was working. I was working for the Internal Revenue Service of all things. And they loved type. And so I went to my first session there. And I mean, I learned so much about myself in that and quickly decided that I wanted to be certified in that. And that was just a great decision because it certainly has served me well my entire life. And so now I have an outside consulting practice. I serve over 415 clients that I work with, client organizations. And I do executive coaching. I do facilitation. I've just got a great client base, and I feel very privileged to have that. And I present type at least a few times during the week. In fact, I'm going to Auburn, Alabama tomorrow to do a session for their group. And I've really been privileged to do whole organizations. For example, Mercedes-Benz has a big plant down the street from me, about an hour away. And I presented many, many sessions there and to other organizations. So I've really been successful in making type a part of corporate culture, but again, also part of executive coaching. And so as I was thinking about, what we were going to talk about today, I really thought it might be good to look at my type journey in understanding introverts, because obviously I'm an ENFP, I'm an extrovert, and I think it has been quite a journey. So for example, I have a mother and dad. My mother is an ISFJ and my father is an ENFP. There's 7 children in my family. And so big family. I was the oldest of 7. And I know now what my brothers are. I didn't know at the time, obviously, when I was growing up. But I had 2 brothers. One's an ISFP and one's an ISTJ. So we actually had 2 introverts and an introverted mother in this large family of 9 people. And I think about my poor mother. I remember just how frazzled she was. I mean, she was a stay-at-home parent. And of course, she had 7 crazy kids. And I just think about the fact that she was so interesting. I mean, we did a lot of crafts, a lot of fun activities. We also spent a lot of time at the library. And I know now in retrospect that she probably did that just for sanity reasons, so she could have some time by herself and could actually get in the library. We all had to be quiet. She had a teacher's library card, which meant we could check out as many books as we wanted. So we did. We would come home with big armloads of books, and then we would sit for days and read and read and read. And I think about how she figured that out, that would get us to be quiet so she could have some time by herself. I also remember on a humorous note, we had a phone that was on the wall in the kitchen and it had a long cord. And she had a new cord installed on it that was really long. And she would take that phone earring piece and go out to the patio and shut the door and get on the phone with her friends so she could spend a little time in peace and quiet and having some time by herself. And she certainly deserved that. But I also think about the fact that we didn't do family dinners. Most people say the key to happiness for a family is to have a family dinner together. We didn't do that. My dad actually came home for lunch. My parents ate upstairs in their bedroom. He came home for dinner after working 3 jobs, and my parents had dinner in their bedroom. And I think about that had to be really their time to claim sanity and to be away from all of us. It was such an amazing coping technique. And again, I know now why my mother did a lot of that. And again, she didn't know anything about introversion or extroversion. She just figured out ways to take care of herself. And my parents actually would have special dinners every other Saturday night where we were not invited. In fact, we were told to go to bed about 6 o'clock at night, and under pain of death would we come downstairs and interrupt their special time together. So she was really great about creating those particular sacred moments. They could really share that. And even, as I think about, I later married my husband, John, and what an amazing guy, but he's an introvert, but I didn't know that at the time. And he said, let's invite only our closest friends to our wedding. So my list had 335 and his list had 35. It was just such a difference. And it's important to know that I really saw myself in a rather smug way in response to him. I thought, I have more friends than he does, and I connect better to people than he does. And so I saw myself, and I wrongly associated me being a little superior in terms of having all these social connections and really having social competency. And I remember that we actually had a big old fight about 10 years into our marriage. And it was about the fact that I had just felt like I didn't have much connection with other people, and that he felt very remote to me. And I can remember struggling with all of that. And then I went to a type workshop in 1989, and I found out, oh my gosh, I'm married to an introvert. I didn't understand what it was, but I finally had a name to give to it. And Joyce had explained so much to me. I mean, I could really think back about times I had interrupted him or just didn't give him enough time by himself. But then that was a pivotal moment in my life. I literally decided after that to be a better wife to him and to be a better partner. So what did that mean? Well, that meant that he likes to work out. I mean, it's something that's really important to him. Both of his parents died very young, and he wants to make sure that he lives a long life. And so he loves to work out. But that's also a great time for him to have some time by himself. And so I don't bother him while he's working out. I leave him alone. I count that as sacred time, and I make sure that he has that, because that's, again, a time for him to process and think about things inside his head. I can also think about the fact that he worked from home. Long before working from home was a thing, he worked 2 days a week here. He's a senior level computer systems analyst. And so he would go into work, quote, in our dining room early, about 5:30, and work there till about 6:30 at night. But I made an agreement with him. I said from the beginning, you're going to be at work. I'm not going to interrupt you. I'm not going to come into your space. I want to make sure you have this time by yourself. You should feel as if you're at work and not worrying about me coming in and interrupting your thought process. Because again, as a computer systems analyst, there's a lot of me and your being with your keyboard and trying to get things done and solving problems. And I felt like that out of respect for him, that was something that was really important. There's a show in the States called Car Talk, which is on NPR, and it's two brothers that are highly trained individuals, graduated from MIT, but they had this crazy show where they talked about cars, and it's really was not about cars. It was about having a comedy routine, and cars was simply the vehicle they used for that. He loves that show. That's his favorite thing to listen to. And it comes on at 9 o'clock every Saturday morning. And I would say, honey, it's 5 minutes to 9. Do you know where you're going to listen to your show? And so I made sure that he had, quiet space to listen to without me interrupting him, because again, I love him. And I felt like that was something that was really important. But then there'd be those weekends where we had like a lot of company that came maybe Friday night and didn't leave till Sunday afternoon, and we missed Car Talk. So what did I do? I downloaded it and made sure that he still got a chance to listen to his show without me being there. And I would leave and go to the Y and work out for 2 or 3 hours to make sure he got that time by himself. And even when it came to vacations, I mean, that was a really good testing ground for the introverts and the extroverts. So again, our entire crazy family, all the brothers and sisters, we'd all go on vacation together. But we had some rules about it. Number one, it had to be a big enough house where every adult couple got their own room. That was a non-negotiable. We didn't do the old pile everybody in and sleep in one room thing. That was not going to happen. We knew that the introverts, for them to have a good vacation, they had to have time by themselves during the day. They could read on the beach, read on the deck, and we would not interrupt them because that was their time and it was their vacation as well. At night, we'd come together and cook and play games and do that sort of thing. But we wanted to be a great vacation for everybody. And so that was something we actually talked about as an expectation among all of my siblings and all the people that we married. And it worked so well that when Casey, our daughter, Casey, the three of us were going on vacation. She was probably about 6. It was going to be a 2-week vacation. She said, Mom, Dad's an introvert. You and I are extroverts. How are we going to make sure that he gets his time by himself? So even she was thinking intentionally about that. I'll never forget when my business partner came over, who is an introvert and has introvert preferences. And she came down the stairs. She said, Mr. Rao, how are you? My name is Casey. I'm an extrovert. What are you? And he said, I'm an introvert. She says, so is my friend Emily. She's here with me right now. Now, she needs her time by herself, but she's not going to get it today because we're playing, but I'll make sure she gets it tonight. So even as little as she was, she thought about how important that was and what it meant. And as an adult, we still have that same rule. We go on cruises together, and she and I will intentionally go away for a few hours and let John have the entire stateroom by himself and make sure he has that. And I think it's really paid off. We've had a long, happy marriage. I mean, my husband's just amazing. I see his introversion as just being a tremendous gift to our family. For example, he said we got married, we're not doing loud music in the morning. We're not doing TV. Now, that was different for me because I was single, live in Atlanta. I'd turn on the radio, get things going crazy. And when I married him, I thought, this is going to be terrible. It wasn't. It's something that started our day off on a great note, quiet, dark, candles burning, reading. What an amazing way to replenish. And he's taught me to really value that oasis in the midst of all the chaos. And I would say it certainly paid off because during the pandemic, I went into a bit of a panic thinking how shut away I was going to be from everybody. And that was really a challenging time. But I learned that he and I can make it during those times. It was great. I was never bored. We always had plenty to talk about. He would even say things like, hey, I know you need time with other people. Get on a Zoom call. It'll make you feel better. He could see that I had that need for that. So we really made it a commitment to each other. And, and I even think about when we had our huge family at my house for a big old all-day event. And we went into the den and we looked in there and there was every introvert that's in our family. We've got a lot of introverts. And we said, we were laughing because they were reading, watching television. There was not one word of conversation taking place. And we said they were all in there alone together. They had just had enough of this togetherness, but we knew that was an important thing for them. So as I'm saying all this, are there any questions that you're thinking of, Joyce, that are coming to mind before I talk about how I've taught companies about this?
Yeah, I think this is really revolutionary and it's really important for people to know about because, as you mentioned, sometimes when we don't know about these differences, we might think that we're superior or inferior to other people. And that's not true. We're just different. And so sometimes the pauses that introverts can take between speech can make an extrovert want to talk to kind of fill up the silence because it's like, wait, are people enjoying themselves? Like, what's happening? Why is it so silent? And extroverts are more prone to be external processors. So they're more likely to want to talk it out, or they're more likely to, when they have a thought, to actually say it out loud. And extroverts have a smaller thought to action ratio. So they're okay, thought and then action right after that. Whereas for introverts, they can look very still, and as they're processing it internally inside themselves without saying anything. I've known some extroverts who can take that cue as, oh, that person's just sitting and not saying anything. They must be thinking nothing. Because if I was thinking something in my head, I would just say it out loud. So sometimes that can cause maybe a superiority or why is that introvert so quiet? Probably nothing's happening. When you learn about type, you realize that there's a huge internal world of richness that they have. They're just not voicing it. Introverts have a longer thought to action ratio, so they probably have more thoughts before they actually act or before they do something. And so there is stuff behind that. It's just all behind the scenes, and you don't get to readily see it. But it exists, and it's there, and it's valid. And so I think type is very good for diversity and inclusion because it really helps you accept people who are wildly different than you. It accepts the neurodiversity that exists within the population. Like, it helps you understand the diversity so that you can treat it justly, as opposed to accidentally having these micro frictions between people where, you know, maybe the extrovert always wants to interact with the world or say things right away or interrupt, whereas the introvert's like, wait, I need a pause to really think this through before I actually give a reply or act. I need to know if my internal world gels with the external world before I do anything. And so it really allows the embracing of differences between individuals when we understand type, because we understand where these like micro aberrations can happen in interactions with people who are different than us. And we don't realize how different people are from us until we get into fights and arguments. And that's when it really shows. But, you know, just like there's a trend about people wanting to know if you have an internal monologue or if I don't have one. It's like, wait, you have a voice in your head and I just see visuals or nothing? It's like mind blown. We're living such different realities, and type teaches us that we have these different realities on a daily basis. We have thousands of these little differences, and typology helps us acknowledge many of them too. So
exactly. Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I've done in my professional work has I've made it part of my mission to really explain introversion to themselves and to extroverts. So I'll give you some examples. One of the things I say in my classes is that for introverts, time alone is not a luxury, it's a necessity. If there were people all day long, they immediately go home at night, and there were people all night long, there's not an hour for them to have some time by themselves, they're going to end up stressed out because it's absolutely critical for them to have that. And sleep does not count as time alone. You know, I'll remind people that's why a lot of times you'll have introverts stay up later or get up earlier, trying to feel that craving for time by themselves, because sleep does not count for that. And that's why when I explain that, people go, oh, so that's why my wife stays up later than me. You know, it's like a light bulb goes off because they haven't really understood that's the dynamic that was taking place. And, you know, I still use that metaphor that we all use about introversion being an onion. We're going to peel away the outside layer to get to the good inner core. But you can't just barge your way in there. You've got to earn it. And if you repeat things an introvert told you in confidence, you're out. You've lost your privileges. That's going to be it, because that's part of the trust factor. And I also remind the extroverts that lunchtime can be that special time alone. So, for example, an introvert, you know, is sitting there reading a book. An extrovert says, hey, go to lunch with us. And the introvert says, no, I got a few things I got to catch up on. That's okay. Go ahead and go on. Poor thing. They don't have any friends. So they're all of a sudden deciding that the introvert is pitiful. They don't have any friends, that they're lonely. And of course, none of that's happening. They're just rejuvenating and trying to recover from whatever's there. And I said, but don't stop asking the introvert. It might not be that day. It may be 2 weeks later, they are ready to go. So don't take it as rejection of you. Take it as they're saying, this is a need that I have. So I have a lot of my clients go, did not know that was even going on, had no sense that may be the dynamic that's there. And then I talk about the fact that, for example, when it comes to going back to what you just said a minute ago, process inside your head, that we as extroverts will layer question upon question upon question. We're not getting a response. We're stacking all these questions instead of asking and zip and relax. I say count. Just sit there and think about, count to 10, whatever it might be, because again, you'll be so richly rewarded when the introvert gives you this just amazing answer that they have really thought it through. And I said, so just wait for the reward. The good thing's going to come from that. But I also say, don't mistake lack of eye contact for thinking they're not responding to your question, because many times they'll look away and they're looking at the wall to go back to that mental file cabinet to try to figure out where the response was. And if you're asking questions in the interim or judging them and thinking that eye contact means they have something to hide, shame on you. That's not what's happening. You're making all that up when that's not exactly what's taking place. And I think boundaries at work are such a huge thing. So, for example, I'll explain to them that many times an introvert will come in early or stay late to get things done. And we as extroverts can often say, oh, Joyce is here an hour early. This is so great. I'll have access to Joyce. Hey, Joyce, listen, let's talk about this idea. And Joyce is sitting there thinking, I didn't come in early for you. I came in early for me. And so she's thinking, okay, well, that didn't work. Okay, I guess I'll come in 2 hours early so I can avoid Sharon. And I'm sitting there watching you and I'm thinking, oh, Joyce is here 2 hours early. This is even better, more opportunity. And I remind the introverts to gently say to the extroverts, hey, if it's not a matter of blood, flood, or death, can it wait until we start work? I said, you have to justify what you're doing. There's no need for you to justify anything at all. You could simply be staring into space for that hour, but it's your hour, not your hour to justify to somebody else what you're doing during that time, and to really respect that. The other thing that happens is that, and see if this rings true for you, an introvert will sometimes build up, get their work organized. They build up a nice wall of concentration. Just as they get the final brick put in their wall of concentration, the extrovert stops by and say, hey, you got a minute? The whole wall just crashes. What is it, Sharon? So I ask my question, they answer it. Then they have to take 2 giant steps backwards, reorganize their work. Just as they get the final brick put in their wall, I come in and ask another question. And this happens. And so therefore you can find the introvert making giant steps backwards and making no progress in their work because they simply can't get stuff done. Now, it doesn't mean the introvert has license to just shoo people away because, for example, I was coaching someone with ISTJ preferences, and she was complaining about the fact that people were interrupting her. And I said, well, Kay, why are they coming to your office? She said, because the system's down. I said, well, Kay, what's your job? She said, to get the system back up. And I said, okay, that's not interruptions. That's your job. I said, either you greet them with a pleasant look on your face, don't go, or any of those kinds of things, and make sure you take care of yourself at another time. But when you're trying to do your job, that's not your time to vie for that time by yourself. You're supposed to be available to people in response to that. The other thing I say is that extroverts tend to wait loudly. So an introvert's on the phone. An extrovert walks past their desk and goes, and they'll start doing this. In other words, I'm outside your office, pay attention to me. I said, they will drive the poor introverts crazy. So I always say, look, just go ahead and make a meeting with them and so they can go on their way, because otherwise they're going to continue doing that, interrupting the extrovert's work. And I also remind extroverts, when you've got to interrupt an introvert, to ask the question, is now a good time? Please don't say, are you busy? Of course they're busy. That's such a disrespectful question. The better question is now a good time? Is there a better time for us to meet together? So settle those things and make a meeting, and then go away and leave that person alone in the interim. Let's go back to the comment you made about processing, which I know there's a lot of conversation about that, which is so true. But one of the things I explained to extroverts is that sometimes an introvert will mention an idea at the beginning of the meeting. and nobody acknowledges the fact they said anything. Then lo and behold, 20 minutes later comes the introvert's idea out of the mouth of the extrovert. And the introvert's sitting there thinking, wait a second, how come when I said that idea earlier, nobody responded to it? And now the minute this person's saying it, because it's got a little more zip to it when they say it, they're getting credit for it. I said, well, let me explain to you what's not happening. This is not happening. Joyce mentioned a good idea. Nobody realized she said it. I know, I'll say it and I'll get credit for it. I said, you know what? Extroverts are not that fast. Here's what's happening. First of all, they're all talking on top of each other because for extroverts, that is collaboration. That's how they do it. They all interrupt and talk, and that's fun for them. And their energy's going up as they're doing that. And that's not fun for an introvert because interruptions are rude and like verbally being stepped on. But then the idea of the introvert goes to the back of the brain of the extrovert. Then it goes to the middle of the brain, and then it feels like the heavens opened up and conferred a fresh, new, original idea that they thought of. Then they speak the idea as if they came up with it. And so they're not saying, she suggested something. Nobody realized she said it. I'll say, and I'll get credit. I said, we're not that quick. We're not that quick at all. But I said, here's the word of the wise for the introvert. Reclaim it. Simply say, you know what? Thank you for bringing my idea out again. I mentioned it, earlier in our meeting. Perhaps my timing was off, but thank you so much for bringing it out again because I really want us to pursue looking at that. I said, if you don't reclaim your ideas, we will put you in the corner, in the dark, in a cardigan sweater, and label you as a non-contributor. And that's not fair. So I said, you really have to advocate for yourself in that situation. And I think it's interesting because one of the things I always ask introverts after I speak about this and I talk about this, many of them say, I've known there was something different about me than the rest of my family. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to explain it to everybody. Is there any way you can make a house call to our family? Because my family needs to have an explanation of what this is. And so I do that. I make house calls, or I'll have free sessions on the weekends where people get to bring their families, and we have conversations about this because, again, I think it's really important that we understand this dynamic and how it works. I had a father come up to me and he said, Sharon, this makes so much sense. He said, my wife is an introvert. I'm an introvert based on everything you've told us tonight. I'm an introvert. Our 12-year-old is an introvert based on what you've told us tonight. My 19-year-old, extrovert. He blows in from college, brings all of his music and all of his friends. It is party, party, party the entire weekend. He said the 12-year-old came to me and said, when's he leaving because he's ruining our family? He said, Sharon, if the kid did not look just like me, I swear he spawned from Satan because he does not act like the rest of our family. So I think there's that whole sense of, just really, as you go back to what you said earlier, not understanding each other, but what a difference it can make. And I'm eternally grateful for my introvert husband. I think he's amazing. I think he'll cause me to live longer because he makes sure that I have peace in my life. He watches me for when I'm burning the candle at both ends. And I so appreciate that. And I love the fact that inside that amazing face of his, behind that's so much rich thought. And if I just am patient and wait for it, I'll never be let down. It's just amazing. So that's my take on the things that I think that we as extroverts could do better in terms of really respecting the introverts around us. What's funny about all of this was that I was doing a session for a client, and my client is an ESTJ, has ESTJ preferences. And she said, you know what, Sharon, I listened to all those things you said about introversion, extroversion. I think you gave the introverts more time than you did when you talked to the extroverts. And I said, I'm going to tell you why I did that. Because we've had all the time so far. We've had all the attention. We've had all the air. We are the ones that have really taken over everything. And it's now time for us to really listen to what it is the introverts have to offer to us. And she sat there for a minute and she said, you know what? You're right. And so I thought it was so funny. She was actually counting the slides and how many words I said and so on and so forth. But nevertheless, I think it made an impression.
Sharon, I think that this is incredibly revolutionary. It creates a movement of respecting introvert preferences, because then now you have a name for the phenomenon that's been happening your whole life, but you just didn't know a way to put it. And so this is like a mind-blowing thing for people to really internalize if they really, really take this to heart. It can change a lot of people's lives, their futures, their fates, because this could be the main point of misunderstanding in their life. I will preface it too that there might be some extroverts who feel like they're antisocial too. There are a few cases of this, and I think it happens from trauma, or it's like, oh, I liked people until I found out they were all using me for stuff, and
No,
so I don't like them anymore. But extroversion has facets. So this is like sociability is one facet of being an extrovert, but you can still have extrovert preferences without needing to be extremely gregarious. Like another sign for someone being an extrovert is someone who just constantly interacts with the external world with no break, as what Sharon was talking about. Someone who's just like constantly doing or just constantly engaging with the world. You don't necessarily need to talk to people as long as like you're engaging continuously with the world without needing that downtime. And that still counts as extroversion too, just for like the possible maybe ENTJs or ESTJs in the crowd who are like, they've passed their people phase and now they're on like another phase where they're conquering all these projects and goals. But yes, this is so true, because introverts tend to feel very talked over because they take a while. So Sharon is a part of an organization called Type Coach, and they have this saying, I believe, I could be butchering it too, where introverts kind of have a 2 to 48-hour period of needing to ferment on their ideas, or they need it to settle in. And then like sometimes you have to wait that long to get a proper, full, thorough response from an introvert in a way where they feel like they're giving you a complete response to what you're saying. And so, yeah, if that spurred any thoughts for you, I'd love to know.
As you were saying that, it made me think about this. I was coaching an ENFP plant manager of a rather large plant, as a matter of fact. And he was saying, Sharon, I just don't get any good ideas from my my directors that report directly to me. And I said, what do you think they are? Do you think they're introverts or extroverts? And he and I have been talking about type a lot. And he said, I think they're all introverts. So I took him back to the Type Coach material, and I said, look at what it says, this important slide, 2 to 40 hours. I said, give them a heads up about what the agenda is, what the topic is that needs, good ideas, and give it to them in advance, and then see what happens. So he came back to the coaching session the next week, and he said, oh my goodness, what a difference that made. He said, I realize now I've been springing all this on them. It's not that the ideas weren't there. It's just that I was impatient and didn't give them a chance to really think it through and give me the richness. And he said, such amazing, great ideas. And so I've spoken to his direct reports since then, and they said he's very conscious about saying, I'm doing this because I respect you. And I want to make sure that I'm helping you reach your highest potential in these meetings. And so it's really led to just a great situation for them.
Absolutely. I think that's a wonderful solution, to give the introvert space to percolate the topic beforehand so that they come prepared with some sort of thing to say and they have a chance to let it sink in. Introversion is a slower process because they need to check in with their internal world first to see what they think of it. And so for an extrovert, they might want to operate at a faster pace, and it might be a little bit impatient or overbearing or overwhelming for the introvert. I know that I've experienced that, where sometimes extroverts overwhelm me because they're very right now, give me that right now. Whereas I kind of want to sit on it and think about it. You mentioned something very pivotal, because I do notice, because extroverts operate at a faster pace or a quicker pace, just because they do less internal editing and they kind of like edit out loud, that sometimes it is overwhelming for the introvert. And then the extrovert's like, why am I getting nothing from this introvert? Oh, yeah. That is an accurate scenario that probably happens to people in a day-to-day life, where the extrovert's waiting for something to happen in real time right now. And the introvert's like, wow, this person is staring at me and needing something right now for me. This is scary. This is intimidating a little bit. It could be. Not for everyone.
And you read another thought, something else that made me think about this. And it's, for example, if me and an introvert had like a bad conversation the day before, and then we come into work the next day and I say, hey, are we okay? Yeah, we're fine. And I'm thinking, that does not sound fine to me. Hey, y'all, did Tim say anything to you about being upset with me? Did Tim say anything to you about being upset with me? I'll go shop for answers, trying to find reassurance. And I remind the introvert that you've probably let go of it and you've moved on, but just reassure the extrovert just for a moment. We're fine. I'm just busy. I have a lot on my mind. It's not you. I said, because otherwise we're searching your face for some sort of evidence that everything is fine. And you're just not there yet. That's not where you are. Your mind's on something else totally different. But if we can interpret it as being about us when it's really not about us. So, sometimes I do remind my sweet introvert friends, be sure to change your face just a little. And especially if I've asked you a question, you say nothing back. I said, could you snort, stomp your foot, something to make sure that I know I've connected. And then I promise in return, I'll be quiet and not say anything back. And I said, it's teaching each other the ways to be great with each other, mutual respect one another.
I think that's a really good point. Yeah. I think sometimes introverts can be vague with their responses, as in they don't give enough information for the extrovert to get the full story. And so it leaves the extrovert with questions. It's like, wait, you left this part blank. And then the extrovert will try to search very strongly for the answers that they're missing, or they'll try to fill it in themselves. And then I think sometimes they might offend introverts. So I've had that happen where it's kind of like, I'll give a very vague statement. It's not enough information. And I don't realize it's not enough information because I did all the processing in my head and I'm just saying the end conclusion or the end result from everything. But I'm leaving out a lot of the transparency of my own thoughts of how I got there and all of the other information. I just think I'm giving you all that you need to know. But I'm not actually. And it leaves a lot of unanswered questions. And so what will happen is extroverts will then kind of just go wait. I'm missing so much transparency of what I need to know. And they'll either, like what you said, Sharon, ask a lot of people about it. It's like, hey, if Joyce, yeah, that thing. Because they're impatient, they'll just come up with what they think might be happening in their own head too. And then as an introvert, I might feel a little intrusive. It's overwhelming. It's like, wow. It's almost like I was trying to make it less of an issue by giving just a small statement, but then I accidentally made it a way bigger issue because now it's become everyone's issue, and now I have all these assumptions I have to clear up too. And I'm like, man, I was trying to make this less of an energy drain. Introverts really like to conserve their energy, right? So sometimes when I give very general statements or just the conclusion of my thought, I'm thinking that it'll save me energy. I'm like, if I'm just very very concise and I only give what I need to give, then my battery will be really good. I won't feel drained. I'll feel like I don't know. So it was all my energy that I've used to protect my energy has actually counteracted. And now I'm put into the situation where I need to expend energy to fix the problem that wasn't there to begin with. And I'm like, oh no, now I have to correct all of this, whatever this has blown into. Great. And I guess that's maybe a small difference too. Introverts are always kind of managing their energy. They're protecting their energy because it's a limited, finite resource. Whereas that may result in a lot of lack of transparency because they think that by talking less, they also save themselves more energy.
I mean, that's such a good thought. And as you were saying that, it made me think about one of the things I've had explained to extroverts, because they'll say, when I get home from work, I don't want to talk on the phone either. I said, you know why? Because you've given it the office. You've been with people all day long. They have pulled from you. And so you need time by yourself also. But I always tell them it's still not the same as the introvert. I know, for example, I can go many days without time alone, but then I need it in a lump But my lump will never be the same as my husband's daily installment. It'll never be the same thing. But I can certainly appreciate what he's brought to us in terms of, let's don't answer the phone at night. Let's have quiet. It's great. I mean, it really has helped me, I would say better quality of life. And I appreciate the influence he's had on our marriage in terms of that, much better than I did the first 10 years. So I've made up for it now since then. But I think it's just really honoring and respecting what he has and just seeing it for all its amazement.
That's a really good point, Sharon. So extroverts can also relate to wanting time alone, but it's a little different. So like for you, it's like, wow, I love those lumps. After that long bout of interacting with the world, I do need some alone time to recharge. And a part of that is like a human thing too. Oprah Winfrey, who is most likely an extrovert, needs to recharge. And so she thinks she's an introvert. So she's like, after a lot of many parties, I need that one break to recharge. I'm like, it's a little different, Oprah. It's a little different. Whereas like for actual introverts, it's a necessity. Like you really need it beyond just the normal universal human need of needing alone time. You need alone time to feel like a complete person.
Mm-hmm.
So I think these differences are so pivotal, especially if you're with someone who is also extreme on the preference for this too. You could really grate or annoy, or you can find problems with another person when they're really just differences that can be better managed and even celebrated, because all of these traits, they have positives and negatives, and one is not better than the other. But oftentimes when things are unknown, when we don't understand something, we might infer judgment onto it. So we might project judgment onto it. But when we actually have a name for it, that judgment goes away and we're like, oh, this isn't wrong, it's just different. It helps you feel not crazy. And it helps you love people better. And you can use typology to love people better because now you know how they're wired. So now you know how to meet their needs better. And it's just something so loving and compassionate you can use the system for. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think about one of the things I always say is that, go back to the word you just used, judgments, is that this helps people generate new stories inside their head about, and curiosity. Instead of being furious, being curious about what are people up to, what's happening, what is it, am I judging them from the way I would do it versus the way they would do it? And I think that's one of the reasons why I've really been so successful in terms of personality type classes being done in the corporate setting, because people do see the advantage of that and really see the fact that they don't want everybody to be just alike. That's not a good thing for any organization. And I definitely practice what I preach. That's for sure.
Beautiful. Yeah. And I think these are the kind of lessons that also have changed your life and will go on changing lives. And so thanks for passing down the knowledge, like this vital knowledge that can help make or break a marriage or a workplace relationship or a friendship. Sometimes we just need a little bit more understanding and it can go a long way. And so thank you for the beautiful thoughts on this difference that can lead to drastically different approaches in how you do something. And thanks for sharing your life and what this meant to you personally too. And so if you enjoyed this talk, feel free to check out the November conference. I'll have it linked below. And it's going to be about how to use type in counseling, therapy, coaching contexts. So if you want to check it out, it's wonderful stuff. And thanks for carving time out of your day to talk with me.
Thank you. I so much appreciate you.
Take care.
Thank you.